Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today we are going to be working with these gorgeous flowers. Now, sometimes I look at the packaging and think, I'm not sure that I can recreate that, but let's give it a go, because when I purchase an item, I love all the ideas that come with it. I love seeing more ideas for the items that I choose to invest in. When I choose to invest in something, I want to make the absolute most of it. So I'm going to, for starters, take inspiration from the packaging for this one and show you how I did it relatively simply, honestly. And I think I love the outcome of this card. I'll actually go so far as to say that this turned out better than I kind of imagined it would. So, first of all, I'm going to start by just having plain white die cuts of everything. I find that much easier than sort of starting from a colour, although sometimes starting from a colour can be helpful for me too. But in this instance, I want to have the flowers be not super insanely bright, but I guess they will pop off the background. So once I have got all of these die cut out, I did far more than I thought I would ever need, because of course I want to pop some in the back of my packaging for next time so I don't have to do this job. And I'm going to use some Distress Oxides today. Now, I don't have the full selection of oxides. I don't even have half of this selection of oxides actually. So we're going to have to use what we have, of course. And looking at these flowers, I can just see some yellows. I can really see a couple of different tones of yellows, and of course, I'm sure they've got lots of things, and it can also be digitally altered and all those sort of, lovely things. But I'm going to use a little bit of 4-inch wide mint tape here, and that's going to help hold down all of my little flowers and things so that I can ink these up. Now, if you want to, you can also leave them in their the negative, leave it in the original piece that you die cut, and then add some mint tape to the back of that. But honestly, I see no difference in doing that this way too. So I'm trying to come in with a relatively light hand, and I'm also trying to leave an almost white highlight on kind of around the middle section of the petal. So I'm sort of going in the middle of the flower and then coming in around from the outside. I find this so difficult because I truly just want to cover the whole flower with the ink. I find those that are able to leave the perfect highlights and everything, my brain just wants to cover everything evenly. And so obviously I just don't have that sort of vision for how to leave the highlights and to make them look natural, because they always look like they stick out to me, I guess. They look not natural. But I must admit, I was pretty happy with how these ones turned out. So I started off with some squeezed lemonade, and that was the main base colour. Then I have gone on to some mustard seed, and truly I'm trying to be light-handed and just pop some of this in the very center, and then again I'm going to come from the outside and truly just get like a tiny little bit of the outside. If you need to, then using a little I know it's hard to see the tip of this, but this is like a little brush tip pen. I love these. This has definitely changed my card making, and I really just have one for each color grouping. I don't have 30 of these brushes or whatever. I have about 6 that I use, and that covers all of the colors for me. I just brush it off on a piece of paper towel or something until it's relatively clean, and then go into the next shade of yellow or whatever color I'm using. So I am finding that the finger daubers and these little brushes are perfect for doing this, coming in and just doing the edges. And I know it looks like a little bit of a hot mess on the mint tape, I will admit that, but once we take them off and separate them all out, I think this really comes together. So at this point, I was definitely not sure of where this was going. So I'm going to give my brush a little clean off of the paper towel, and then I'm going to move on to a tiny bit of wild honey. Now I'm only using this colour because it's really the only colour option that I had. As I said, I don't have too many colours, but I just wanted to add like a tiny few darker specks into the centre of these, and I'm really coming in very lightly. Honestly, very minimal. And in fact, I do this better later on with a jelly roll pen, and I think that makes more of a difference. So by all means, skip this last colour if you would like to. But I guess, I did use 3 inks, but I like the look of these, and I just used what I had, and they may not be the perfect sort of succession of inks, the perfect step up each time, but we make do with what we have, and that's okay. I'm going to really quickly move on and do the stem for you just really quick. So this is old paper, and I'm going to pretty much just give a light colouring. I'm trying very hard not to make sure that everything is perfectly evenly covered, that there's some variation in the colour. Then I'm going to take a little bit of mowed lawn and really just come in for some of these darker bits. Now, if the one thing that is great with the Oxides, that if you come in and you have a layer of the Oxide ink down already, for example, the old paper, then I do find that if you add a bit much ink, you can kind of blend it out and smudge it out a little bit, even just using your finger, let alone using the finger dauber. So sometimes it can be a blessing to have sort of, one colour underneath already, and then those mistakes can be a little bit hidden, a little bit more easy. So then I come in and just do the very base of the leaves. Then I'm going to do the same thing with a couple of these individual ones, but because you've already seen that, we're just going to skip over it. Same process. Again, I tried pretty hard to sort of, make sure they looked somewhat similar to the other one, but here is what we have ended up with our inking. And as I said, I know it looks a little bit crazy when it's on the background, but it's okay. Now I have a really good tip for you, and it makes these much more versatile for me. Now, obviously, you may well and truly already know all of the good things to do with these. This is the Tim Holtz Idea-ology layers, sort of ephemera, I guess it is to me. And so I love these, but they're very thick. They're like very thick cardstock to me. And when I'm layering and using several of these on a card front, it becomes so heavy, too heavy, really. But my favorite thing to do with these, and I've kind of just always done it, and I feel like it's just making them more versatile. But all I do is I use my little pointy end of my pick tool, and I just split the layers of the cardstock, and all I want of the top is that top thin layer. So I just pop my little needle in there and just free it up a little bit, enough for me that I can kind of pull the layers apart. And I've never once ripped the image. It really truly just pulls a layer off the back, and this makes them more paper-like almost. I wouldn't say copy paper, but probably more like, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 pound paper perhaps. It makes it easier to rip them. It makes them easier to layer them. All the good things. So this to me just makes them so much more versatile, even though at times I do love them being nice and sturdy and thick, because I use them for sort of junk journaling and art journaling at times, and so I like that thickness, but when it comes to card making, I don't prefer the thickness, but I do love them. And again, when it comes to, purchasing a product, investing in something and choosing to spend that money, I want to make sure that they're versatile, and I can't only use them for one tiny part of my card making, or my journaling, or whatever it is that I may be, the product that I may be purchasing. Now, I am going to create such a cool background. This is a beautiful contrast to the flowers that we have just created. And this, I'm going to take a little bit of Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. It's the only brown I have. So any brown ink is going to work just fine. And I'm just going to ink up some of those edges, add a little bit of liquid glue in there, and sort of make these into a little, composition here, put these together. Then I want, again, these beautiful torn edges, because we're going for the beautiful contrast between the delicate flowers and the aged rustic sort of background look that we're going for. Now, as you know me, I don't measure at all. I just measure by my eyeballs, and so I just rip one edge, then hold it up against my card front, and then rip the next edge, and then hold it up against my card front, roughly eyeball where I need to rip across. I do have the back covered in double-sided tape here, just so that these pieces really weren't going to come apart. If I had waited a little bit longer and let the glue dry sufficiently, then I could have just ripped them, but I wasn't. I was impatient, and the glue just takes a minute to set up, and so I added some tape to the background, and then actually I'm going to use that tape to adhere it down, so it worked out perfectly fine. Make sure I've got just a little bit of ink all around the edges here, just a tiny bit, sort of not really in the centers, and I love that the three of those backgrounds that I've put together are all different shades, so you can really see the different layers that we have put together there. And then on a beautiful stark white background for the card base, I think this is working really well. As I said, I'm just going to peel off those pieces on the back, and that's going to be what adheres this down onto my card base. My card base is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. This is the Pink and Main tear tape, and I'm really enjoying this. I actually tried out several different companies, tried out several different brands, and you know, the things that you want in a tape is you want it to be able to tear and not stretch. You still want it to be good quality and thick enough that it sort of doesn't get all skew if when you do tear it. You want it to be, you know that it's going to be permanent when you put it down, essentially, that it's not going to peel up, all those good things. So this is the one that I have chosen. I have now purchased more rolls of this because I have settled. I like this one. The Pink and Main tear tape is beautiful. Now, this is a step that you absolutely can skip. I have my little ball pen here, and all I do is I go on a piece of foam, a piece of fun foam, or you can do like a mouse pad or anything that's sort of squidgy, got some foam to it, and I just run this around the flowers, and this just gives them a little bit of texture and a little bit of curve. By all means, if you are going to send this through the mail, then perhaps this will flatten out, perhaps some of it will be left over. You can use bubble wrap and all those good things, but these have a beautiful nice curve to the petals now, and all I do is put glue, some matte medium. Its proper name is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and I buy it in bottles and put it into these little glue containers, and I just put it right in the center of the flower, hold it for a second so it's in place, and then that beautiful dimension of the petals and the little highlights that we have left. I think this has worked out pretty well, so I'm really liking this. Then I did decide to put one of the littler flowers inside each of the big flowers. Now, that's not what the packaging has at all, but as I said, we can take inspiration and we can bend the rules along the way. I like the look of the layered flowers, and as I said, I just didn't have a plan of how many I would need, and so I thought I might add more in, and I had these extra leaves that I thought I could add in, and I do end up adding a couple in, and I also end up adding one that has some foam tape behind it just to give a little bit of dimension as well to this, because apart from a tiny little bit of dimension in the flowers, it's a relatively flat card. So here's a little one that I have a tiny bit of foam tape on the back, and then really, really simple, I'm going to come in with the Gina K sentiment and cut one of these out. These come in both black and white, or black on white and then white on black, and so I'm just going to cut out one of these. I think this card could be used for lots of different occasions, that's for sure. But for this one, I will go with the Gentle Birthday Wishes. I think that's going to be really nice. Just trim this down with my long bladed scissors, trim each end of it, and then I am going to pop a little bit of brown ink around the outside just so it sort of, you know, matches in a little bit and isn't quite so bright white, but it does match up because of the white that we have used on our card base, so everything matches really nicely. And then pop a little bit of foam tape on the back so that this stands out, and then pop it into the side. I really don't want to take away any more from that beautiful background that we have created, or those beautiful bright flowers. Now, just to finish this off, you can stop here by all means. I have a gel pen that is sparkly gel pen, and it's sort of a burnt orangey kind of color, not quite brown but not quite orange, and so I'm going to do some tiny wee dots. This is really hard to see on camera, but it kind of shines a little bit in person and is a little bit sparkly, so I quite like that for the center of the flowers. But anyhow, I hope that you have enjoyed this version today. Remember to take inspiration from the packaging, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to follow the script of what they have done, and don't be disheartened if you don't achieve their exact look, because it might take you in a whole different direction that you weren't expecting either, which is always fabulous. As usual, I will have links down below the video in case you are interested. But other than that, thank you so much for being here. If you like this content, then subscribe, and I have a whole lot other videos as well on my channel. But other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye!